example, if say if your mother went through starvation or something like that, that it would actually trigger, switch some genes and other genes off, so that when you were born, that you'd be more efficient at using your food and energy and so on, you know. And maybe you know, if you were born in a place where there was plenty, then obviously, you know, you're more likely to put on weight and develop diabetes and that sort of thing.
Okay, okay. Sandy?
The other point about that, this thing about health problems, is that more people are surviving now anyway. You know, more of the people who are born actually survive. So it is possible that those people who wouldn't have survived in earlier ages are precisely the ones who are going to have more health problems anyway. That's one possible contributory factor to that. But I think I'm right in saying that Sir Peter Medawer was a biologist who took seriously the possibility of the DNA itself actually changing because of the effect of environmental factors, or better feeding or whatever. He thought that, or he at least was prepared to consider the possibility of this kind of acquired type of inheritance. I don't know how fashionable this idea is, but you know, it's a bit like this question of evolutionary psychology and the whole sort of mixed up attitude that some professional scientists seem to have about purpose and result. You know, I can remember some scientists saying once that if evolution provided this human beings, human males, with a particular kind of physique, it would have been silly not to have provided them with the psychology to go with it. Well, I mean, that's just stupid. It's, you know, it's the psychology probably arises from in a kind of quite predictable way. But you know, if you're a big, strong person, your confidence in yourself is likely to be higher. But of course, it could lead to two results. It could either lead to you sort of throwing your weight about, or not throwing your weight about, because you don't have to. You know, if you say do this, and you look 6'9" and sort of huge and muscular, people are sort of not likely to contradict you too much, you might argue. But I think there's a whole confused series of ideas which are being played with by some scientists about, you know, which get the difference between cause and effect seriously mixed up. I don't know if Adam's got anything to say about that, and you know, if we're still kind of fighting even in science against some sort of unhelpful ideas.
But when, as I said, you know, Darwin had been able to work out purely on the basis of observation that the evolution of speech must have come about through natural selection, and he realised that natural selection worked on small differences between you know, plants and animals and so on, but he didn't know what caused these small differences. And the arguments we've just been talking about at the front here is, I mean, the modern theory is it's genes, and genes are copies of it. They don't copy each other perfectly. And there's all sorts of reasons why they don't copy each other perfectly. One of them has been suggested is rays from outer space, you know, a cosmic rays. I mean, it could well be true that food, I mean, you know, could affect the composition of the DNA, but it would be indirectly, you know, in a way that. But if in fact these theories do turn out to be right, then Engels will turn out to be right. I mentioned what he says in the part played by labour in the transition from ape to man, which was written in 1876. So it was what, 15 or so years after the publication of Origin of Species. But he talks about, well, I'll just read what he says. The predatory economy of animals, by which he means animals just taking what they find from from nature, and then when they've used all those resources, they've got to move to eat other things. This predatory economy of animals plays an important part in the gradual transformation of species by forcing them to adapt themselves to other than the usual food, thanks to which their blood acquires a different chemical composition and the whole physical constitution gradually alters, while species that remain unadapted die out. I mean, this is wrong on quite a few accounts, because at that time they thought inheritance took place through the blood, and we now know it takes place through genes. But he was putting forward an argument which people would be putting forward today, that the food you eat affects the in modern terms the genetic constitution and that. But what the whole point is that these things don't happen directly through the inheritance of characteristics acquired by animals and plants during their lifetime. It has to take place through genes and them not being copied properly.
Vince?
Yeah, a fairly small point, but one that I think is probably quite significant. I'm sure a lot of us here who are very least sceptical of religious ideas, and in most cases we don't believe them at all, have probably trawled through the internet looking for atheistic websites, and websites which show the contradictions of the Bible and maybe the Quran as well. And there's one particular one that I came across, infidels.org, and that they were listing, appropriately titled, that they were listing some very interesting contradictions, many of which I can't remember now, but one which very clearly sticks in my mind because it seems to me to be a very significant one, and that is in the creationist story, or fairy story, perhaps we should more accurately say, given in Genesis, which this meeting started off with. It's talking about the order of the creation of animals and human beings, and something, a basic contradiction like this in one of the chapter 1 and in chapter 2 contradict one another. In one of the chapters, the Bible says that God created animals before human beings. In the following, or in the other chapter, it says God created human beings before animals. Now, it seems to me that something fundamental as that, and such a glaring contradiction, at the very least, undermines any trust that a person could have in the accuracy of the Bible. Maybe not entirely, but that is a very important contradiction.
Yeah, but it's only some Christians, and the minority of Christians, that believe in the accuracy of the Bible. I mean, the mainstream Catholics, the mainstream Christians don't believe. I mean, the Catholic Church no longer swears by the truth of the Bible, and it says that the biblical account, this is the Catholic official doctrine now, the biblical account in Genesis is not a historical account. So I mean, and they themselves point out there's a contradiction between chapter 1 and chapter 2 of Genesis. So I mean, you can refute people who say the Bible is literally true, but that's not refuting people that say that there's a God creator who started it all off and who created man, which is a different thing. So I mean, anyway, the Catholic Church has never relied on the Bible. In fact, it didn't allow people to read the Bible until about the 19th century. So you can refute the most silly supporters, but even, as I say, even the Jehovah's Witnesses are not arguing that it was created literally in